All right, starting off where we left off. The Miranda rights, as we discussed in the previous one, are covered in the Fifth Amendment. Moving into just say no to interrogations and not being a witness against yourself. Say nothing to the cops. It's the smart thing to do, as it says right here. You have the right to remain silent. Use it. If at any point in time you are questioned by the police in regard to a crime or something that someone else has done, it is best to not say anything and to simply ask for a lawyer. This is for your protection so that you are not trapped or accidentally say something that you're not supposed to. It is misconstrued and it leads to your arrest. You just don't say anything. You ask for an attorney. When you ask for an attorney, the police are supposed to stop talking to you and they are supposed to get you an attorney. Being that you are minors, however, you simply need to ask for your parents and tell them that you're not going to say anything else and that you would like an attorney present at the time. This, of course, is for your protection. Now, moving into double jeopardy. I like to show this image because, one, it's an excellent movie, and two, it gives the perfect example of double jeopardy and how that can affect you during a trial, or rather after a trial. Okay, so you are tried in a court of law and you are found guilty of committing murder, but no body was ever found. So they've found you guilty. They never found a body, but they found other evidence to indicate that you had killed somebody. And they try you, they convict you, and you go to prison. You find out while you're in prison that the individual you supposedly killed is actually not dead, as is the premise of this particular movie. She is accused of killing her husband. They found blood on her. They found her with a knife. Never found a body. She's convicted, she goes to prison, and she finds out while she's in prison that the husband that she supposedly killed is alive and well in another state, and that he faked his own death to get rid of her. So she is told by an attorney in the movie, who happens to be in prison with her for her killing her own husband, that because she's already been convicted of killing her husband, when she gets out of prison, she can actually kill him and they cannot try her again because they've already convicted her of committing the crime. Now, this is far-fetched and not likely to happen, but another example of double jeopardy is, let's say, for example, someone is accused of committing armed robbery and they go through the trial and they are found not guilty. And shortly after leaving the courthouse, the same individual starts bragging to their friends about how they did rob the bank or whatever else that they might have been accused of, and that they got away with it. Unfortunately for the police and the district attorney, that individual, even though they've confessed, cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So even knowing that the individual did it, once they've been found not guilty, there's absolutely nothing that. Now, at this point, I'd like you to take a moment to pause, go through your notes, make notes in the margin, and come up with 3 questions that can be answered with your notes, and keeping in mind that they must be higher level thinking questions using your agendas, and I believe it's page 7 or 8, to come up with the appropriate word to use when doing this. So you're going to stop at this point and pause and make your questions. All right, moving into the 6th Amendment. The 6th Amendment goes hand in hand with the 5th Amendment. The 6th Amendment is a fair and speedy trial. Now, this one, everyone has the right to a fair and public trial done in a proper amount of time. This one's pretty self-explanatory. If you are accused of a crime, the prosecution must make their case within a decent amount of time. For example, if you're accused of, I don't know, stealing from a grocery store $100 worth of food, then the prosecution can't take 5 years to convict you of the crime. They must be able to make their case within a reasonable amount of time, and that would be a matter of a couple of months. However, there are some things that are so heinous that there is no statute of limitations, meaning there's no time limit, and one of those being murder. If you murder someone in the state of Texas, there's no statute of limitations. If they can prove it 30 years from the time you did it, then you could still go to jail for it. So it has to be, when we talk about a fair and speedy trial, it is in reference to crimes that like stealing or things like beating someone up. It all has to be done within a certain amount of time. The Sixth Amendment is also the one that gives you a lawyer. This is part of a fair trial. It's not fair that somebody should go into a courtroom without a lawyer or the benefit of being offered a lawyer. So as we go through the Sixth Amendment, just keep in mind that it's the reason in your Miranda rights it says you have the right to an attorney, and if you can't afford one, one will be provided for you. Because it's not fair that you have a prosecution paid for by the people and you can't afford a lawyer. Which leads me to, I want my lawyer! The poor little mouse in his sad little world. He wants the lawyer. And then, of course, there's your lawyers. Did someone say a lawyer? And of course, this is because lawyers have a bad reputation and people don't think too fondly of them. Which leads me to Amendment number 7. Now, if Sixth Amendment has to do with criminal charges, the Seventh Amendment is your common law. If you remember from our assignment yesterday, or if this is Friday, our assignment on Wednesday about the judicial branch, the difference between common law or common or civil court versus criminal court, the Seventh Amendment is what you would use if you were suing someone or someone was suing you. If accused of breaking a common law, a person has the right to a trial by jury. Just like with a criminal case, if you are being sued by an individual, then you have the right to a trial by jury. Meaning you can have a jury box, you can have a judge, and with all the bells and whistles with lawyers and whatnot. A good example, and the one that I used in class for some of you, was the tobacco industry. In the 80s and 90s, the tobacco industry, or rather companies, were being sued by people who had developed lung cancer as a result of their addiction to nicotine. And the reason they were being sued is because the cigarette companies knew early on that the nicotine, 1, was addictive, 2, they were specifically putting chemicals into the cigarettes that led to addiction, but also led to faster cases of cancer. So the companies were sued according to the Seventh Amendment. In a court of law, it was trial by jury. They lost millions of dollars. And that's why when you look at cigarette boxes today, the cigarette companies have put on the boxes Surgeon General warning: if you're pregnant, do not smoke, and smoking can lead to cancer. They do this so that no one can claim that they were not warned, and they can't sue the tobacco industry for selling them the cigarettes and them thus getting cancer. And the jury box, this is what you see on TV a lot, where you have the 12 jurors, and these are the people that listen to the information and decide whether or not to find in favor of the plaintiff, which is the person accusing the other, or the defendant, the person who is being accused of a common law issue, such as the tobacco industries, or somebody hits you with their car, or, I don't know, you dented someone's vehicle when you borrowed it, that kind of thing. All right, this leads us to the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishments. The Eighth Amendment is established so that people who are accused of a crime will not be punished or fined excessively. This is pretty easy. It's there are a lot of punishments that we've seen in history which are definitely in the category of cruel, and the Eighth Amendment is a way for the founding fathers to keep our government from ever becoming cruel and inhumane to those who are accused of crimes and convicted of said crimes. The limits on fines goes hand in hand. You don't want them to be excessive. You don't want them to be extreme. For example, if you're caught stealing a bag of $3 candy, they're not going to fine you $2,000 because, let's face it, that's ridiculously excessive. Which leads us to the cruel and unusual. All right, so what you're looking at here is are several examples of the cruel and unusual in our past. Up in the top left-hand corner, you're seeing the stocks. This is where they would place your head and your arms within a wooden, contraption that would hold you. People would throw things at you. They would ridicule you, make fun of you. This is considered cruel and unusual today. If you look over to the right, this is flogging. These are ropes that have been tied into knots at the end, and they whip you with them. It's worse than being whipped with just a straight whip, because these things could be added, or rather they would add in some instances, little spikes and little sticker kind of things that would stick out and would then dig into your skin. And then in the lower left, this is the pear. I'm going to leave this to your imagination, but it went in and it was closed. It opened up while it was inside. And then in the center, we've talked about branding before in this class. Of course, it is cruel and unusual in our country now, but back in the day, they would put your head in the band that's there at the top, and they would strap you in the chair, and they would take a hot metal piece of, a hot metal that was shaped into a T for a thief, an R for a rapist, an S for a smuggler, and they would brand your face so that everyone would know that you were a criminal in what you did. And then over to the right on the bottom, you see the guillotine, which is also considered cruel and unusual in today's society. And this particular one is no longer legal, because if that blade happens to be dull, then they have to lift it multiple times in order for it to chop off your head. Hence the term cruel and unusual. Now, we're getting into the last two amendments, which are a little tricky, so I'm going to suggest that you stop the video now and you look at numbers 6, 7, and 8 and create your 3 questions. Alrighty, the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment is the people's rights. No part of the Constitution can deny or take away the rights given to all in other parts of the Constitution. The Ninth Amendment is interesting because the Ninth Amendment simply means just because it's not written into the Constitution doesn't mean you don't have the right. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to own property, but it is a clear understanding, as the early Americans understood, that that was the goal in life, was to own property, so they didn't put it in the Constitution. But it's still your right to own property. In 2016, driving a car, it's a right that we all have. Now, mind you, it's not a right that you're guaranteed, because they can take it away from you and there are rules to it, but it's still a right that we enjoy, and it's not one that's going to be in the Constitution because the founding fathers never would have thought of it. So, translation: just because the Constitution doesn't say you have the right doesn't mean you don't. And in fact, just because it doesn't say you have the right to release dangerous gas fumes, it is assumed or implied that you have the right to do those things. Just please don't do it in class or in school, because, come on, yuck. Sorry, I had to add the little funny in there. It was a necessary thing. That concludes this section. We will move into the last amendment of the Bill of Rights in the next video.